The engines hummed beneath me like a sleeping beast, low and steady, promising a smooth takeoff into the clouds. The cabin smelled faintly of citrus-scented disinfectant and rich leather seats. First class was everything I had hoped for. The glass of welcome champagne in my hand sparkled in the cabin light like it understood the celebration. I'd waited years for this moment. Not just a vacation, not just a seat on a plane, but a reward, a victory. I shifted in my plush window seat, 3A, taking, in the oversized seat, the hot towel neatly folded on the side tray, and the quiet murmur of hushed conversations around me. It felt sacred almost. My noise-canceling headphones rested around my neck, waiting. I was finally here. No more red eyes crammed between strangers. No more dry pretzels and plastic cups of soda. This was mine. And for once, I didn't feel like I had to apologize for it. That was, of course, before she arrived. A shrill, nasally voice sliced through the gentle hum of pre-flight tranquility, like nails on a chalkboard. Excuse me, what is happening here? Heads turned. Conversations. Paused. Even the flight attendant's practiced smile faltered as a woman in oversized sunglasses and a blindingly bright pink tracksuit stormed down the aisle. She had the energy of someone who expected the world to part for her like the Red Sea. Everything about her screamed chaos. Her perfume was so overpowering it practically introduced itself first, and her designer bag, clutched like a badge of honor, swung dangerously close to seated passengers' faces as she stomped toward the front. She stopped in front of me, blinked dramatically, and tilted her head. "You're in my seat." I blinked, up at her, momentarily thrown off by the sheer audacity. I glanced at my boarding pass, still tucked in the seat pocket, as if somehow I had hallucinated my assignment. "No," I said, keeping my tone even. "This is 3A. That's what's on my ticket." Her lips curled into something between a smirk and a snarl. "There's no way you have 3A. That's my seat. I always fly 3A. The flight attendant stepped in, sensing the shift in air pressure between us. "Ma'am, can I see your boarding pass?" Karen, because that's what my brain had already named her, thrust her ticket toward the flight attendant with the kind of flair usually reserved for throwing down playing cards in Vegas. The attendant examined it, then looked at me, then back at the ticket. "Actually," the attendant said slowly, "your seat is 3B. Karen scoffed, as though the mere suggestion was beneath her. "That's impossible. There must be some mistake. I always book 3A. I'm Gold Elite. Look it up." "I understand, ma'am," the attendant replied, still polite, still professional. "But your boarding pass says 3B. This gentleman has 3A. Karen whipped her sunglasses off in dramatic protest, revealing thick lashes and an incredulous glare that could probably curdle milk. "This is ridiculous. He's probably one of those people who prints fake tickets or switched seats when nobody was looking. I've seen it happen." I felt the heat creep up the back of my neck, half from embarrassment, half from anger. "You really think I snuck into first class? For what, the peanuts?" "I don't know what you people do," she snapped, and it wasn't just her tone. It was the way she said "you people," dripping with judgment, with entitlement. "But you clearly don't belong in my seat." The attendant's face froze in that tight customer service expression that means I heard that, but I'm pretending I didn't. My jaw tensed. Around us, a few passengers began to glance over. You could feel the attention tilting like a spotlight. Everyone loves a spectacle, until it's happening next to them. "Ma'am," the attendant tried again, "please take your assigned seat so we can begin boarding the rest of the passengers." Karen ignored her completely. She crossed her arms and stood her ground, blocking the aisle, still glaring at me like I'd broken into her house and started eating out of her fridge. "I want to speak to the supervisor, or the pilot. Someone who actually has authority. Miss, the seat assignments are confirmed digitally and printed on the boarding pass. There's no override." "Call him," Karen barked. Call whoever you need to call. This is unacceptable. I could feel my heart thudding now. Not because I was worried I was in the wrong, but because I knew, people like her often got their way. Not because they were right, but because it was easier to cave in than deal with the storm. That's what this was. A storm in a pink sweatsuit. Look, I said, trying one last time to stay calm. I paid for this seat. I used my points. Booked early. It's clearly on my ticket. Just sit in 3B. Karen's eyes narrowed like I'd insulted her ancestors. I don't sit in 3B. I paid for 3A. This is just classic. You people always think you're entitled to everything just because you found some loophole. You think status doesn't matter. I wasn't even sure what she meant anymore. Class, race, gender, all of it? I could feel the indignation boiling up, fighting with the part of me that just wanted to be left alone and watch a movie. But it wasn't going to be that easy. Karen whipped out her phone and began dialing someone. Her voice dropped into that fake sweet tone reserved for manipulating restaurant hosts and customer service reps. Hi, babe? Yeah. It happened again. I'm on the flight now, and some guy is in my seat. I'm not kidding. Seat 3A. No, the crew is being useless. Can you call your friend at the airline? I'm not dealing with this. She cast me a smug look while the phone rang. You're gonna be real embarrassed in a second, she said under her breath. The flight attendant looked at me, silently, asking if I was okay. I nodded, barely. Karen ended the call with a satisfied, "He's handling it," then shoved her phone into her designer bag. I suggest you get up before this becomes a bigger problem. I didn't move. She stared at me, waiting. So did everyone else. The uncomfortable silence stretched until you could almost hear it creak. The attendant cleared her throat. If we can all remain calm, I'll escalate this to the cabin supervisor, and we'll sort it out. Good, Karen said, flipping her hair back. About time someone with actual decision-making power showed up. Not that it's hard. I mean, it's obvious who belongs in first class and who doesn't. She let that last part hang in the air like poison. My fingers clenched the armrest. My champagne, once bubbling with promise, now sat flat and untouched. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was something else entirely. And the worst part? People were watching like we were some kind of in-flight entertainment. Some were clearly annoyed, but a few looked at me like they might believe her. That's when it hit me. Karen wasn't just entitled. She was dangerous in the way that only privileged people with influence and no accountability can be. She had that smug confidence that came from getting away with this kind of thing too many times. She thought this was going to end with me being escorted to the back of the plane, and for a moment I started to believe it too, until something changed. From a few rows back, a guy in business attire leaned forward and said, "Hey, I saw her boarding pass when she walked in. It definitely said 3B. I noticed because I'm in 3C." Karen froze. "Sorry," he added with a shrug. "Didn't mean to get involved. Just thought the truth might help." The flight attendant turned to Karen again. "Ma'am, please take your assigned seat, or we will need to delay departure." Karen's face darkened, but she wasn't done. Not by a long shot. She turned back to me and hissed, "Enjoy it while it lasts. This isn't over." Then she stomped off to 3B, throwing herself into the seat like it had personally offended her. The murmurs died down. The flight attendant gave me a sympathetic nod. I put my headphones on, but I didn't hit play, because deep down, I knew she was right. This wasn't over, and I had a sinking feeling that things were about to get much, much worse. Tension lingered in the air like turbulence no one could name. I tried to sink into my seat, to reclaim the calm I'd felt minutes before, but it was like trying to find silence inside a storm. Even with my headphones on, my focus scattered. I could still feel her. Karen, just 2 seats away in 3B, simmering in a cocktail of resentment and entitlement, sending pointed sighs into the air like poisonous darts. Every shift of her body was theatrical, every scoff a fresh accusation hurled in my direction. But I wasn't imagining it, because just 10 minutes into the flight, she struck again. She flagged down a different flight attendant, a younger one, and leaned in with her signature faux concerned voice. "Hi, I just wanted to let someone know. I think that man in 3A might be using a fraudulent ticket. I don't feel safe next to him." I heard it. So did the woman across the aisle, whose eyes widened. "Ma'am," the attendant said cautiously, "we've already verified his ticket." Karen's voice dropped, conspiratorial. "You may want to double-check. These scams are getting more sophisticated. Fake barcodes, Photoshop, you never know." It wasn't even subtle anymore. She wasn't just trying to steal my seat, she was painting me as a threat. A liar. Someone who didn't belong and should be watched. Her weapon wasn't just her entitlement now, it was the performance of victimhood. And in her world, a single whispered accusation was enough to shatter someone's dignity. The attendant walked away, probably to consult the others. Karen leaned back, satisfied, and took a smug sip from her glass of wine. I caught her eyes for a second. There was nothing subtle left in them. She was daring me to react. I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I sat still, pulled out my phone, and opened the in-flight Wi-Fi portal. It was slow, patchy, barely good enough to load a page, but I wasn't trying to scroll. I was preparing. What Karen didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, is that I was not just some anonymous, defenseless passenger. I had a background in media and digital marketing. I knew how to craft a message, how to shape a narrative, and more importantly, I knew how to document everything. First, I opened my camera and began snapping discrete photos. My boarding pass, the seat number, the cabin layout with me clearly seated in 3A. The time-stamped flight app showing my reservation. Then I quietly took a photo of her in 3B, mid-glare, mid-glass of wine, mid-smugness. Receipts, as the internet would call them, she didn't see. She was too busy crafting her own narrative, because suddenly her phone was out too, and that's when she went full throttle. She turned slightly in her seat, angled the camera toward herself, and began recording what sounded like an Instagram story. I couldn't hear every word through my headphones, but I caught enough. So here I am, trying to enjoy my flight, and this guy literally stole my seat. I don't want to be confrontational, but I'm tired of people thinking they can take what isn't theirs. She tilted the phone to get a half view of me in the background. Uncaring, unaware, she thought. Then she added a caption. Entitled men. One seat thief. Disrespectful. AF. It wasn't a post, it was a hit piece. I stared at her, feeling something heavy and acidic rising in my chest. Not rage, not even fear, just injustice. I could already imagine the comments. People taking her side because she said it first. The world often believes the loudest voice, not the honest one. I pulled up Twitter. Started typing. Ever had someone try to steal your first-class seat and then accuse you of fraud when it didn't work? Meet Karen, seat 3B. Attached were the photos, the timeline, the proof. I added one more picture. Her smug selfie posted moments ago, already captured and saved before she could delete it. The flight had barely reached cruising altitude by the time I hit tweet. I didn't care if it went viral. I just needed the truth out there. A digital tether in case this spiraled further. Karen kept going. Another flight attendant approached her, this time the head purser, a composed woman in her 50s with no tolerance for drama. She knelt beside Karen and spoke quietly, likely trying to de-escalate. Karen nodded, smiled too, wide, then pointed to me. "He's making me uncomfortable," she whispered loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. "He took pictures of me. That's a privacy violation. I want him reported." I took out my phone again. This time I began recording a video, not of her, but of myself. Hey friends, just in case something wild happens, like me being kicked off this flight for literally sitting in the seat I booked. Here's the situation. I laid it out quickly, facts only. No ranting, no insults. Just context, visuals, and calm tone. It was the kind of clip you post not to go viral, but to protect yourself. And within 15 minutes, it was already gaining traction. Likes, retweets, comments like, "Oh no, not another plane, Karen," and "Is that the same woman from the Delta coffee freakout?" I paused. Wait. I clicked one of the comments. A link led to a 6-month-old viral video of a woman screaming at a hotel clerk over a denied room upgrade. Same voice, same sunglasses, same Karen. Someone else posted screenshots from Reddit. "This woman scammed my sister out of a giveaway. She ran for fake followers. Be careful." I refreshed the tweet. Notifications exploded. Hundreds. Then thousands. And Karen? She had no idea. While she sipped her wine and updated her story with a dramatic boomerang of her flipping through a travel magazine, her digital house of cards was already collapsing. An hour into the flight, the head purser returned. She had a tablet in her hand and a quiet intensity in her expression. "Sir," she said to me gently, "can I speak with you?" I followed her toward the galley area, trying to keep my pulse steady. "I just wanted to personally apologize," she began, voice low. "We've received several messages regarding the situation, and I reviewed the seat assignments myself. You were, and are, absolutely correct." I nodded, unsure what to say. There was some confusion created by the other passenger. "She's a frequent flyer, but that doesn't excuse this behavior. We're aware of the video she posted." So they'd seen it, or maybe someone had sent it to them. Either way, the tide was turning. "We're addressing it," she said. "Would you like to formally submit a complaint?" I nodded slowly. "Yes. I'd also like to note she accused me of fraud, lied about feeling unsafe, and publicly defamed me online." The attendant's lips tightened. "Understood. We'll document everything, and I've already filed an incident report. If it helps, I've moved you to a more private seat, 1A. No one next to you." I blinked. "Really?" She smiled faintly. "Consider it a gesture of goodwill, and I think it's best for everyone if we separate you two for the remainder of the flight." I didn't argue. I gathered my things, gave Karen one final glance. Her eyes widened, confused as I walked past, and settled into the new seat, 1A. An upgrade in every way. From my phone, I opened TikTok and uploaded the earlier video. Added a caption. "When Karen tries to steal your seat and accuses you of fraud, but the internet does what it does." Within minutes, the comments rolled in. "Wait, is this the Karen from the influencer scam thread? Yo, she's famous for the wrong reasons again. People like her always slip up when they mess with the wrong one." I felt a flicker of satisfaction, not because it was going viral, but because I wasn't invisible. I wasn't silent, and I wasn't alone. From the seat behind me, a woman leaned forward and whispered, "That video? It's everywhere. You're trending?" I smiled. "The first genuine one all day." Back in 3B, Karen began to realize something was wrong. She glanced at her phone, scrolled, froze, then quickly turned her screen away from the aisle. Her fingers flew across the screen, probably trying to delete posts, hide stories, scrub her name. Too late. The internet doesn't forget, especially when it served a fresh plate of karma. I leaned back in my new seat, pulled the blanket over my lap, and took a long, satisfied sip of freshly poured champagne. She wanted a scene. She got a broadcast, and something told me the descent was going to be a lot rougher for her than for me. The rest of the flight was a strange mix of surreal calm and mounting tension. I was in 1A now, the top-tier seat, the kind you only get when someone's looking out for you. The soft hum of the engines beneath me was comforting, the gentle swaying of the plane offering a temporary escape from the chaos below. The tension in the cabin, however, didn't let up. Karen, now fully aware that something was slipping out of her control, fidgeted in her seat, her eyes flicking constantly toward me. Every now and then, I caught her glancing at her phone, watching her lips twitch with silent curses as notifications flooded her screen. At one point, I caught her muttering under her breath, her words sharp and clipped, but I couldn't make them out clearly. Whatever she was saying wasn't kind. That much was certain. I could almost feel the weight of her gaze through the back of my seat, but I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I'd already won. I turned my attention back to the flight attendant who had made her rounds again, this time taking a moment to check in on me specifically. She leaned in slightly, her voice low but full of sympathy. "Just wanted to make sure. You're comfortable," she said, eyeing Karen in 3B with some wariness. "Is everything okay? I noticed you were a little unsettled earlier." I nodded, offering her a small, grateful smile. "I'm fine, thank you. Just still processing the absurdity of it all," she chuckled softly. "It's not every day we have a passenger trying to hijack someone else's seat and turn it into a viral scandal. You've handled it well." I didn't feel calm. I felt like the storm was still raging, just under the surface. But hearing her recognition made it a bit easier to breathe. In a way, it was a confirmation that I wasn't just imagining the madness, that this wasn't just some personal confrontation I'd have to bury. The internet was already in full swing. People were digging into Karen's past, pulling up receipts of her previous misadventures, each one more ridiculous than the last. The tweets were lighting up, and not in the way she wanted. It wasn't long before I got a direct message on Twitter from someone who had been following the saga. A screenshot attached, and my pulse quickened as I scrolled. "Hey, I don't know if you saw this yet, but you're Karen? She's been posting the same thing on multiple flights. She's tried this fraudulent seat scam with a few other passengers, but it's always her acting like the victim." The message came from someone who claimed to have been on a previous flight with her, and the story matched perfectly with the one I'd just experienced. I skimmed through more posts, more photos, all of them leading to one inescapable conclusion. Karen wasn't just some entitled, unlucky passenger. She was a habitual troublemaker, a serial seat snatcher, someone who had used her status and manipulation tactics to get away with this kind of behavior over and over again. I couldn't help the knot of disbelief that twisted in my stomach. How many times had she pulled this stunt? How many other passengers had sat quietly, just hoping the flight attendants would smooth things over, letting her win by default? Before I could think more on it, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing we'd reached our cruising altitude and that the seatbelt sign would be off momentarily. I could feel the energy in the cabin shift. Not just because we were at the halfway point of the flight, but because the quiet undercurrent of tension had started to build. The time was coming. That's when Karen decided to make her move. She got up suddenly, striding toward the front of the cabin like she had a purpose. I noticed the way she straightened her shoulders as she passed by first class, her eyes not even bothering to acknowledge the crew members who offered their polite smiles. She was going somewhere, fast, and I had a sinking feeling it wasn't just to grab a drink from the galley. Within seconds, she was standing next to the head purser again, her voice low but unmistakable. "I need to speak with the captain." I was already pulling out my phone again. The moment I saw her pull that same dramatic, "I'm an elite passenger, so you must listen" routine, I had a feeling she was about to make one last, desperate move to get me kicked off the flight. I turned on the recording function on my phone, starting a live video. "We have a situation with the passenger in 3A, Karen was saying. "He's been harassing me. He's recording me, making me feel unsafe, and I want him removed from the plane." The flight attendant nodded slowly, keeping her voice steady. "Ma'am, as I mentioned earlier, There's no issue with the seating arrangement. We've double-checked everything. There is no reason for us to remove anyone from the flight. I'm not going to sit next to him for the rest of the flight, Karen insisted, her voice rising slightly. He's a danger to me. The absurdity of it hit me. There I was, sitting quietly in my seat, doing absolutely nothing but existing in my assigned space, and yet I was the villain in her story. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my face neutral. But inside, I was steeling myself for what was coming next. A few rows behind, someone, another passenger, likely in the same camp as the business guy who had helped earlier, had started speaking up. "Ma'am," he said, his voice firm, "I don't know what's going on here, but I was just speaking to this gentleman in 3A, and he's not the problem. You're causing a scene. It's getting uncomfortable for everyone else around you." Others began to chime in. A woman from row 5 spoke up, offering her own testimony that Karen had been disruptive from the moment she boarded. Another man behind her in row 4 confirmed he had seen the photos and videos being circulated. Word of her lies had already spread, and what was once her personal vendetta was quickly turning into a collective witness statement against her. Karen's face turned beet red. She spun around, her hand gripping her phone like it was a weapon. "This is harassment! I'm Gold Elite! I'm allowed—" She stopped short, as if something clicked in her mind. Her words faltered. The crew was watching. The passengers were watching. The whole plane seemed to be holding its collective breath. And then, in the sudden stillness, she snapped. The mask cracked. The carefully constructed image of a victim, an innocent woman wronged by a stranger, vanished in the harsh light of reality. "I don't care what any of you think," Karen spat, louder now, the manic edge creeping into her voice. "This is my seat. I should be in 3A. This entire flight is beneath me." She pushed past the flight attendant and stormed toward the front. But this time, there was no one following her. No one applauded her drama. No one was taken in by her show. The crew kept their distance, their eyes now cold and disinterested. And as she made her way back to her seat, her head held high, something in her posture shifted. She knew it was over. The entire cabin could feel it. Her charade was over, exposed to the world. The people who had taken sides were now realizing just how deeply they'd been manipulated. And as much as she tried to maintain that queenly air, she was just a woman who had overplayed her hand. The rest of the flight was quiet, the simmering tension finally dissipating. The flight attendants did their rounds, and everyone in the cabin seemed to hold their breath, waiting for something more to unfold. But nothing did. The plane landed without incident, the wheels skidding across the tarmac as the world outside returned to normal. As we taxied toward the gate, I felt a small, satisfied sense of victory. Not because Karen had been punished, though that would come in its own time, but because the truth had come to light. The real story, not her version. The version where the powerless had taken control, where the manipulator had been shown for who she truly was. I stood up, gathered my things, and made my way down the aisle. Karen didn't look at me. Her eyes were fixed on the door, her head high, pretending the world hadn't just moved on without her. And as I stepped off the plane, the sun shining brightly as if the universe itself was pleased with the outcome, I pulled out my phone one last time. The notifications were still rolling in, but now they were full of support. New followers, new comments, new allies. "Justice, baby," I muttered under my breath, feeling the smallest smile tug at the corner of my lips. For once, the villain had been exposed, and the world had made sure she wouldn't get away with it again.